So here, the main thing that I want to show in this case is the overall hierarchy. So when we are creating a JavaFX application, there's this idea of a hierarchy that is constructed on your components. So when you have a component, all components would essentially be inheriting from the node class, and this node class can be specialized in a number of different ways. So for instance, one thing that you can do is have like an image view component, which is just a subclass of node, and that would, as you would expect, allow you to visualize a specific image. So you would have a visual component that you can load an image in that component. And a component is just a portion that is in your canvas, in your graphical window. Okay. Another thing that we would use a lot, and perhaps the most important thing that we have here, are the different panes that I can have. So typically, the way that I would set up a user interface would be by choosing either one or a combination of those panes. So as you see, these three main panes here inherit from the parent pane, and this is just a page that allows me to arrange things on a more convenient fashion. So for instance, the grid pane is really a grid of elements that you would see. So like a matrix, a table of, let's say, if you go with 3 by 4, it's going to be 3 columns by 4 columns, and you can put anything in each of those locations. So for instance, I could have this thing here represented as a grid, as you can imagine, right? That would be one very strong candidate for my solution. Too many windows. Let me clean this up. Okay. Another kind of pane that I will show some proper examples of source code that actually shows that to you, right? So I just want to very quickly cover these different classes that I can use. So the grid pane, as I said, is actually the idea of a grid. The flow pane is just the idea of a fluid canvas space where you can keep adding elements. So you can have that. So these just follow the current idea of web interfaces where you have some region here, and as you add elements, it's just going to keep adding in a fluid manner, meaning that I can actually resize that. So I can push this and make these wider, and then my components would be arranged automatically. So it would just cover the full extent.
Look like feeds in Facebook or like.
Yeah, like a feed, exactly. Yeah, and depending on the size of the interface, the device that you are using, right? So like a cell phone, you would most likely have a single column, but then you move to a computer, so now you have more space, so you can benefit from that and show more components, 2, 3, 4, how many you need. So it's what we call this flow, or just the idea of a fluid panel. And then finally, we have the border pane, which is a more structured pane that has clear spaces that are just the top, bottom, left, right, and center. So you have these predefined regions here, and it also, to some degree, shapes itself if you change the size of your window. Okay, so each of these regions that I have in my pane essentially can I can put any type of element in it, right? I guess if you did any kind of GUI or web-based development, this is not something very new, right? So this idea.
Any of these I can put any other pane as well, right?
Yes, you can also have a pane as one component in a pane. So I can have like a pane here as my center element. So anywhere you can have allows you to do that. Okay. And that's one of the reasons why you would have everything inheriting from Node. Yeah, pretty much anything that you see here, you can use as components as part of a pane. So other things that you can use would be a VBox, which is just a vertical box. So it's kind of similar to the flow pane, but it's restricted to just the vertical orientation. You can have labels, which are just essentially text that would be presented. You can have buttons. So it's very typical to have buttons, right, on graphical user interface. Just allows you to click and assign an event to when you have that click happening. So let me go ahead and show some code examples, and then I think we will need to push that to the next lecture, but we kind of touched a little bit on that already. All right, good. So this would be the structure of a JavaFX application. The first thing that you need to observe is that I am extending application. So application is a class that you see in JavaFX. When you add these components, you need to observe if you are really adding the correct component, because sometimes you would think that you are adding, let's say, a button that belongs to JavaFX, and you might actually be adding a button that belongs to Swing or to AWT or something else, some other library. So just pay attention, especially in those more traditional components, if you are really using the correct library, right? So even IntelliJ would sometimes suggest the wrong library for you. So you need to pay attention to that. Okay, so after I extend that, I have the typical constructor of my class. I have the methods init, start, stop, and the main method. So one thing that is interesting in a JavaFX application is that the main method is actually optional. So if you have the start method overridden, that's actually enough for us to have the program run. But there's no harm in actually doing this way here. So you can just use the main to launch your application. Okay, that essentially is done for you if you don't do it yourself. After you launch the application, what's going to happen is that you would see this order of execution here. You would see the main method we have mentioned already, right? So we would see the constructor of the class. We would see the init being executed, and then we would see the start, and then finally the stop. So you would see the sequence happening here essentially. Okay. This program really is just printing messages, right? So this is just to kind of prove the order of execution of the steps in a JavaFX application. So if I run this program, you should be able to see precisely that order. This is just the window that I have created. I have not added anything, right? So that's why I have a blank window. And come on. And this is the output that I'm getting. So you see that all the steps that are being executed. Do you see the stop here? Why?
We haven't stopped the UI.
Because it's still running, right? So if I actually click here, then you should be able to see. Okay. Any questions on that? Fairly simple, right? So this is available in the repository in GUI basics. Let's go on with our next example. So here is the way that I would use command line arguments. So it's slightly different than the typical Java program in terms of how to how to use those arguments. And the trick here is really just this line. If you see here, I have, as I had before, a class that extends application. In my init method, I am running these get params dot get raw. So these would return a collection, a list of strings. And I can, similar to what I would have in my typical main method, I can just iterate over these args. And then in this case, I am printing in my terminal. So if I would execute this command, this class, I would see as output the arguments that I am passing, right? But I'm not passing any arguments if I choose to run. So I need to actually come here and set the, do I have that already? Yeah. Let me run one time, and then I can just change the configuration here. Go away on. So I can add my, oops, program arguments. Let's say 1, 2, and 3. If I come here and run, you should be able to see the arguments. Okay. Easy, right? Any questions on that? Nope. Next, let's see an example now using something more visual. So let's take a look at what I'm doing here. I have a class called a button demo. You can pay attention that you need to extend that class. I'm setting a width that I would specify for my window by calling the setWidth method. I am creating a button object. So where is this button coming from? From here, right? From here. Okay. I'm creating an instance of a button, and I am using this constructor that I am passing already a text to my button. I'm creating a scene. Every time that you want to present something visual, the typical way in which you would do is create a scene and then add the elements to your scene. The way that you do that, or one of the ways actually that you do that is by using the constructor itself. You call set scene on the stage that you have. So the stage is the idea of the window, and the scene is the idea of a layer that you have. So you can have multiple scenes, but you would have one stage per window. So one window is essentially one stage. And if you change somehow the contents, the graphics of your window, you are essentially changing the scenes in a window. Okay. I'm setting the title of my window. I'm setting the width, as I mentioned before. I'm setting it to be not resizable. And then finally, I'm calling it show that would present the window itself. So the main, same as what I had before, as you see. So if I run this one, you should see now an interface with a title that I chose, a button, and my button has a text, a label in it, right? And because I have set the window to be not resizable, even if I try, I would not be able to actually resize that window. See, so you don't see those typical resizing arrows presenting to me, right? Okay, so for instance, if I would come here and change, you would see that I would be able to resize it. Okay. So obviously you can play different things, right? Like window title comes here, and something different for the label of the button. Is just make sure that somebody clicks, right? Okay. So it's not super complicated. What really is a little bit more involved is identifying which specific classes you would need, especially if you never worked with JavaFX before. You need to, let's say, I want to present an image. Okay, what class would I use to actually present that image, to show that image as a visual element in my windows, right? How do I do that? You can use that document that I have shared with you. That's not comprehensive, so there are actually way more components that you would see in that tree that we have seen. Another thing that you want to definitely use would be, guess what? Documentation, right? So Java API documentation actually brings the things related to the observer, observable, and event handler. We'll talk about the event handler next time. As you see here, I have the class application, which is the main class of a JavaFX application. And you see there's a good documentation here already, some examples, simple examples. And then you see that you can also, this is not related. So you have the stage class that we have talked about. We have the pane. So the pane would be that parent class that would actually have all the possible panes, right, as subclasses. So if you check here the subclasses that implement, you would see that those classes that I have mentioned are here and a few more, right? The flow pane, the border pane, so on. The H box and the V box also, they're fairly popular. So this allows you to essentially have a sense of what classes you can work with, right? So if you export a little bit, you should be able to see that. For instance, flow pane here, region, okay? And as we saw in the hierarchy, the node is the parent-most element from the visual components in a JavaFX application, okay? I will stop here for today. Next, we would see some demos on the different panes. We will be talking about events, how I register some actions against the components. So, for instance, when I click a button, I want something to happen, right? So I would use that click of a button as a trigger, as an event, and I would be registering a procedure to happen in that case. Okay, any questions on the homework? So you can start working on it right away. If not, we can stop here for today. The deadline that I set is just the typical one that we had before the break. So next Monday, end of the day. That's the date that you have. Okay. All right, that's it for